You're listening to the Last 10th podcast. It's where the rubber meets the road. The Last 10th podcast is a show about running and life, or life as a runner. Join me in conversation with coaches, runners, and athletes from diverse backgrounds. Together, we explore how the practice of running helps to navigate through the many challenges we face on the road of life. The last 10th of a mile is often the longest and hardest part of our journey from the start to the finish. Run your last 10th with me, your host, Coach Pilar. Hey y'all, it's me, your host, Coach Pilar Arthur Sneed. Thanks so much for joining me here for another episode of the Last 10th podcast. If you have not done so already, please take a moment to head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave your 5-star positive and favorable review of the show. Why? Because that helps other listeners just like you to find this podcast on Apple Podcasts and many other listening platforms. Today, I am super excited to welcome Bryan to the show. She's an author, she's a runner, and really just an all-around amazing human being. Our conversation today focuses on what happens when life throws you a loop. And I mean a really big one where you had plans for yourself going forward and then everything gets completely derailed. What do you do? How do you recover from that? TJ shares with us today how she did exactly that, and she did that through her own practice of running. How about if we get started? Hey, y'all, it's me, your host, Coach Pilar Arthur Sneed. Thanks so much for joining me here for another episode of the Last 10th podcast. You know, and I know that every single week I get so excited to talk with the guests that I have on the show. And of course, today is no exception. I am so excited to welcome to the show an author, a 10-time Boston marathoner or 8-time qualifying Boston marathoner?
I qualified 8 of 10 times that I ran a marathon.
Okay, so 8 of 10 times qualifying for the Boston Marathon. I am just super excited to welcome Bryan to the show. TJ, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
I'm happy to be here. And again, thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So TJ, where I usually like to start is I usually like for folks to tell me a little bit about themselves and anything at all that you would like to share.
The first thing I want to mention is the year of my birth.
Okay, absolutely.
I was born in 1945.
Wow.
And I was born in rural Maryland, and that's important in a way that you'll sort of learn later. So I will be 77 years old this August.
Wow.
And I think I can say that I am probably one of the oldest African-American women running marathons.
That's awesome.
The interesting thing about all of this is that, during most of my lifetime, women weren't supported as runners, as you know. As a matter of fact, I was 39 years old when the Olympic marathon was for women was finally part of the event.
Wow.
So, and I had graduated from college. when Title IX became a reality.
Wow.
And when I was growing up, there was no support for women in a lot of sports. And certainly there
Absolutely.
was little support for women in running.
Hmm.
For me, running is it's interesting, and I'm doing this at this particular age. I started
Mm.
running when I was 64. So I've been running for about 12 years. So I'm a relative newbie. When I listen to people who've been running since they were 10 years old or 11 years old and
Yeah.
12 years old,
Yeah.
I'm really impressed that they've been running all that
Yes.
time.
Yes. Same.
But I was probably one of the least likely people in the world
Mm.
to become a runner.
Mm.
I was in all kinds of sports, the absolute last person who was chosen for any kind of team.
Mm.
And I was chosen for that team last only because people had no choice. Somebody had to take me. And you know how when you're young, you're frequently categorized from the beginning. I
Absolutely.
was seen as having little physical ability.
Mm.
And so I bought into that
Hmm.
and limited myself. And I have to say, to some respect, I probably deserved to be chosen last. But at any rate, I didn't run. I didn't do any kind of athletics.
Mm.
And that I would become a runner late in life is really surprising.
Hmm.
I will say that I did have some, um, I sort of made some contact with sports when I was in my mid 30s.
Mm.
I was an aerobicizer.
With the tights and everything.
Yes. I'm so excited. And I did that for a while, but then I wasn't able to continue doing it because of my work demands.
Mm.
I was a university professor
Mm.
for most of my career.
Mm.
I was even chancellor of a university, and
Wow.
I was not engaged in much of anything in terms of athletics then because I just didn't have the time.
Hmm.
So as I indicated, I'm a relative newbie to this. I started running in 2009,
Hmm.
and I sort of started running. It was an impulsive thing.
Sure.
I was reading a newspaper, and I saw an article about a half marathon. Mind you, I had no idea what a half marathon was, or I wouldn't have done this. I I saw a newspaper article about a half marathon training program,
Hmm.
and the beneficiary of the half marathon was the University of Maryland.
Okay.
And I had earned my doctoral degree from the University of Maryland, so there was
Okay.
some connection of sorts. And I
Okay.
had just returned to the Maryland area. I didn't know that many people, and I thought, well, this will be a great way for me to meet some people. I'll join
Absolutely.
this training program. So I
Absolutely.
said this something to my son, and he says, "But you can't run." And I said, "Oh, but I'm going to this training program." And he said, "Do you even know how long a half marathon is?"
I have no
And I thought,
idea.
and I said, I pretended I did. Of course, I had no idea what it felt like to run a mile, much less 13.1 miles. So I signed up for this program. I show up, and the program was offered by a running store,
Mm.
and the article indicated that people could come and they could try out the program free
Hmm.
one time. So I
Hmm.
did. I got there and I got lost on the campus where the program people were meeting.
Hmm.
And I saw this lady and she says, "Oh, well, they're running 6 miles." Running 6 miles.
Wait, what? Today?
I'm thinking, what? I can't run 1 mile. So I joined I did go, and I said, okay, I'll pay and I'll come back.
Yes.
I didn't have any running clothes. I had on a sweatshirt.
Yes.
I had a. Do you remember those Sony Walkmans or something? Those
Yes, I
tape
do.
players?
Yes.
So I had that, and I thought I would just walk around a little bit. They had gone. There was no way I was going to
Yes.
interact with these people unless I
Yes.
just waited for them to come back. So I ran
Yes.
around with my little tape player thumping against my side, and as I said, I came back the next week, and then I learned the truth of TJ and realized the lunacy of my signing up for this program.
Yes.
we were asked to run around the track because what happened in the training program is that there was one day a week when we would run on the track, and another day we would meet on a trail. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a technical trail.
Mm-hmm.
We would run on this trail. We do our long runs.
Mm-hmm.
It took me forever to be able to run around that track one time.
Mm-hmm.
It took me several weeks because I would
Mm-hmm.
have to stop.
Of course.
So, but I continued on.
Of course.
And I had this belief that, hey, I can work harder than everybody else. And so if I can, I'll work hard and I'll do this.
Yes.
So I was in that program, and my goal or my objective was to finish the half marathon. And I did not want to be the last person.
Mm.
So I about a week or two before the half marathon, I was able to walk run 10 miles.
Wow.
So I went to the race, and as it turned out, and there were, I think, 16 people, I believe, in my age group.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know what an age group award was. It didn't matter since I didn't win one. But I was fourth. So I was fourth in my age group. So I guess, beat 12 other people.
Yeah.
Maybe they walk. Those other people walk. So, but it was okay. My time was like 11 something. Yeah. And considering that I was, I guess, how old was I then? I was still 64 because I hadn't had my 65th birthday yet.
Yeah.
And the route was not easy. So I did that, and I thought, okay, one and done.
Mm-hmm.
We know how that is.
Here we are.
Yes, here I am. And then I ran 52 races after that. Would have run more, but in that time, but I was injured several times. And one time I actually did not run for about 14 months.
Wow.
So and I kept getting plantar fasciitis.
Ah, yes. That's a hard injury to deal with. Yeah. I've had that in the past myself. Yeah.
So I kept going on, and as a matter of fact, I missed the 2013 Boston Marathon because I couldn't train because of plantar fasciitis.
Wow.
And of course, I have 5 sisters. Again, some context. And my mother had passed away by then. And they said, "Oh, Mom was watching you from heaven. You had that injury, so you couldn't go to Boston that year." And interestingly, one of my sisters was going to meet me there, and I would have been coming in around that time probably, the bombing, and she would have been standing probably in that area. That's where she'd stood in the past, 2011, when she came. So, but that was one of the races. I've missed several races because of injury. Most recently, I missed the October 2021 Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I fractured my foot.
Whoa. Ow. How did you manage to do that?
I was doing an 18-mile run, and it was hot. And I had not planned to run down to this trail that's shady. And I said, well, I'll just go down there. And I ran down a hill that I run down literally hundreds of times. And I wasn't looking. And there's a sidewalk there's a sidewalk to the left. You make a left to go onto the trail. I wasn't looking and tripped over the sidewalk and tried to catch myself on a railing that was across the trail. And when I did that, I twisted my foot, I broke my 5th metatarsal, which is very difficult to heal because of the lack of vascularity in that area. So that was on August 8th. And I tell people that Zion Williamson, the basketball player, he and I suffered the same injury on the same day.
Wow.
He's not back yet.
He's not.
Not back yet from his injury playing basketball. But at any rate, I've recently begun to run again, and I was supposed to have had surgery, but we didn't go the surgical route. But at any rate, I'm running again. I'm happy to be out there running. Actually, absolutely. I was out there this morning.
Absolutely, that's awesome. Awesome. So what was the thing that kind of, precipitated this on a whim? I think I'd like to run a half marathon. What happened to take you down this road?
As I indicated, I just returned to the area. I'd retired,
Mm,
and I had the time,
mm,
and I thought, okay, this will be a way to meet people.
mm,
And I went into a running store,
mm.
not the one that sponsored the race, by the way, another one, not the one that sponsored the training, another one.
Sure.
And I was going to buy shoes, and I was talking to a woman who was working there, and she was a runner,
Mm,
and she suggested that I consider running with the Baltimore Pacemakers, a running group. And I'd heard of the group,
mm,
but I'd heard the group member that the group was like super fast.
mm.
And so I thought, I'm not running with them. And so she told me that the group, the members of the group were, ran at different paces. Some people
Mm,
were newbies, some people ran fast, some of them didn't. So after that conversation, I communicated with the person who coordinated the group.
mhm,
He gave me information about the runs, and I ran with that group for a long time.
mm,
And that group ran through the city of Baltimore,
mm, mm,
and I liked the people,
mm.
and I just loved sort of the spirit of the running community.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's such wonderful people. And once you start on it, you sort of become hooked. I
It's so
mean,
true.
and so I don't run out. I run outdoors all the time.
Mm.
I rarely, sorry, treadmillers out there. I don't usually run on a treadmill.
Yeah,
I need to be outdoors, and it has
yeah,
nothing to do with, I'm not knocking the tread. Personally, I just need to be outdoors.
sure.
And what I discovered was that running helped me in so many ways. I mean, it was not just physically, but psychologically.
Mm,
I mean, it lifted my spirits.
mm,
I
mm.
noticed that you're a mindful runner,
Yeah, the mindful runner, you got it. Yep.
and I running helped me to deal with sort of past experiences and
Sure.
present experiences, because I mean, I read these books about mindfulness,
Mm,
and it helped me too when I was just trying to get going at the beginning. Sometimes when you go out
mm.
there, I don't feel like doing this.
That's
But
exactly
then
right.
I read this, what was this book about? The book that indicated that when you go out, appreciate the little things. So I
Mm,
would start. And so I did not focus on the fact, for example, that it might be hot or
mm,
tight. I would focus on what was wonderful
mm,
about the moment that I was in.
mm.
I would notice things like the grass. I would notice the
Absolutely.
birds. Uh, I would just I just noticed all these things that I
Mm,
never really took time to notice before. And I
absolutely.
noticed those things because I was outdoors and I was living in the moment.
Mm,
And actually, what began to happen to me too is that running became a time for me to reflect. Once I moved from Baltimore, the Baltimore area, to New
mhm,
Freedom, I had no one to run with. My
mm.
husband is a runner. He's been running a lot longer than I have. He's been running like 42 years. But
Wow.
he um, he actually went from, he used to smoke. And so he went from smoking to running. At any rate, he did. I ran with him for a while, but I was chatty because I was used to socializing when I was running.
Sure.
And so he would say things to me. He's not here. I'm alone. He would say things like, he would say, instead of using that energy talking, shouldn't you be focusing on your breathing or whatever, or use it for your running? I'm thinking,
That cracks me up. That cracks me up because, like, my husband and I do run together. When I first started running, we started running together. But at first, I would want to do the same thing, like, oh, let's talk. And there was just like, I just kind of remember like one time where he just was kind of like, you're messing up my flow, man. Just zip it. And I was just like, well, what the heck?
what happened is then I started running alone because, he was, I just started running. It was just easier a lot of times because even he would say, what do you call running together. You get what we leave the house together. And so at any rate, so I began, so I was running alone. I began to use that as a time of reflection.
Mm. Mm-mm.
So it gave me a chance to think about things. And I also didn't know this until later that running helped me to my mind helped me so much intellectually, because I would like for writing, I get my best ideas when I'm running.
Yes.
And I'm like a word puzzle addict. I get up in the morning and run to do spelling bee on the New York Times, and I'm thinking I've got to get to genius level. And if I didn't have it, which is, you get so many words, and I would come out there and I start running, and the words would just start coming.
Yes.
Words I didn't think of when I was at my computer before I went out to run.
Yes.
And I get so many great ideas, and it's interesting because when I was younger, I never really associated physical activity with intellectual ability. I did not. I know that in a lot of schools, I'm thinking I see movies about England's kids are out there running, and then they go to class. But I never made that association that actually that the running or or any fitness activity actually would foster intellectual growth. And so that was something I learned by running. But I think as I said to somebody who communicated with me on Facebook, I didn't know her, but she was running a race. She's going to run a race that I've already run.
Sure.
And she was asking me on Facebook about my experiences running that race. And she asked me something about why I ran. And I said, I need to run. I mean, I need it.
Same.
And so, and when I broke my foot, I got outside as much as I couldn't go outside for a while because I couldn't put any weight on the foot.
Right.
But when I got out there, as soon as I could walk, I was out there every day because I needed to be outside. Because people, what are you going to do when you can't run anymore? Oh, heaven forbid! But but I said, well, when I can't run, I will walk. The important thing that I learned through running is that being outdoors is important to me. So I told my husband, when I can't run, you can push me in my wheelchair. Outdoors, when I can run, you can push me out on the deck, and I'll sit there and I'll sort of imbibe nature.
Yeah.
But I was never an outdoor person. I was always seen as a bookworm. When people were again categorized, brawn or brains.
That's right.
And I was always, the brains. And I learned now you can have it both ways.
You can have it all. You can have it all. You can be both. You can be both sporty and smart. You don't have to choose.
Smarty and sporty.
That's it. Smarty and sporty. Either one. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about your book, your running memoir. I would love to know. I love to know a little bit more, because in that book, you talk a lot about how running has changed you, helped you through a difficult time in your life, saving myself one step at a time. Yeah.
And indeed, that is true. It has saved me, and it's still saving me. See the prompt. Somebody asked me once, well, how did you decide to write a memoir about running? The truth is that I didn't really plan to write the book. I decided that I was going to write a memoir about my life. And I started this memoir, I don't know, ages ago. I was busy. I worked on it occasionally. And in the memoir, I had written so much about running that the editor said to me, gee, you've got all these pages in here about running. Why don't you take them out and write a book just on that topic?
Yeah.
And so that's how it began. I am a person with a, I mean, my background is not the easiest. I was a first person, one of the first persons in my family to graduate from high school,
Mm,
one of the first to graduate from college. You
mhm,
know, low income, first
mm,
generation student, I think is still
mm,
the phrase that's being used to discuss people like me.
mm,
And I
mm,
went to college at a time when there was no financial aid. So
mm.
I had to work full time and go to college full time.
Wow.
So I made a lot of sacrifices and I was successful. And people always said I had the Midas touch professionally.
Sure.
You know, you believe the hype,
Sure.
but there are things that you can't control. And um, so later on in my life, when I encountered obstacles,
Mm,
and I'm not going to blame other people. I mean, some of them are tied to gender, of course, and to color.
mhm,
But I also made mistakes, political mistakes.
mm,
So, but I believed that I would always be successful. When
mm,
I when I lost my chancellor position, I was not prepared for that
mhm,
in any way because I'd never in my mind failed. And such
mhm,
a spectacular fail. And I don't say it's a fail, it's that politics
mhm,
come into
mhm,
bear. And so running saved me because because I was deeply ashamed.
mm, mm,
And so I working on the book was a I won't say a distraction. I love writing.
mm, mm.
And my husband tells me when I've talked with I have sleep issues. When I talk with the sleep person, he says you should reframe things and it'll help you to um, see the world differently.
Oh,
And so
absolutely.
I tell people, actually, person I tell most often, if I'd remained in that position, I would never become a runner.
Oh, absolutely. You were given a gift.
Yes, and because my running would have been frowned upon
Mhm,
if I did it then
mm,
in the town.
mm,
As a matter of fact, somebody in the town said, "Oh, gee, people talked about the cover of your book
mm.
because of my, I have on a sports bra
Sure.
and a skirt, and I
Yes.
don't have on like a t-shirt." And I just thought that was interesting. She said, "Oh, she said people would really be talking about you because she said they talked about you anyway because they thought your skirts were too short."
That's just so crazy. I mean,
The world is crazy.
yeah, it is. I mean, you bring up something that I think is it's relevant to me, personally, because I've gone through many transitions in my life so far. Similarly to you, I started running late in life, but this running thing that I took up in my late life, never being an active person ever, you know, has been this thing that has literally transformed my life in ways that I just could never have imagined. And it's done so for the better, in that it's allowed me to become more of the person that I think that I've always been meant to be. But I was always being, sort of like, as you said at the beginning, you said it was like I bought into all these ideas that people, told me, you don't do that, that kind of stuff. The transformational power of running is really real.
Oh, I agree. I really do. And I feel so fortunate to have met so many, as I said before, many great people
Mm,
and from so many different walks of life,
mm,
people I would never have met
mm.
otherwise. And I mean, they're in many ways the people I socialize with. Well, I'm not socializing that much right now because of COVID,
Yes,
but 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 the
indeed.
people I used to socialize with all the time, they were almost all tied to running. There would
Hmm.
be, the parties that or the picnics or whatever that the running groups would
Hmm.
host,
Hmm.
or the party that a runner invited me to,
Sure.
uh, the uh, organization I joined because the runner persuaded me to join.
Sure.
And so it's I mean, I'm still doing lots of other things as
Sure.
well, but in many ways, I think the courage to try to do other things is tied to running.
Mm.
I'm trying, by the way, now I finished another book, a novel, which will be
Awesome.
coming out soon. And my next book was going to be a mystery. And
Okay.
I decided I shouldn't be saying this. I don't like, but it's going to be a runner who becomes an amateur sleuth.
That's so great. That's so great.
So I'm now reading all these books about how to write a mystery.
Yes.
But right, taking a chance on running,
Yes.
um, it's something I sort of put myself out there when I had no idea I'd be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Has in many ways given me the permission or made me understand that I can do a lot of things that I thought maybe I could not do.
Mm-hmm.
And about the running, I say I'm honest with people. I'm a very competitive person,
Mm-hmm.
and I love, and because I'm so old, I don't have a lot of competition.
You are not old by any means. You said you're
So that
70, you said you're 74,
I'm
74?
76. I'll be 77 in August.
77. Okay. So like the person I'm looking at, if you tell me you're 77, I say 77 where?
Let me tell you this. Hey, pardon me, I don't mean to be colloquial, but let me tell you this, girl. Yesterday, when I was on my way home from
Yes.
running, this geezer said something to me. Hi, and he made some comment about, when people around our age. I'm thinking, what? I'm thinking, how old is this man? And he thinks I'm close. He's 79. I'm thinking, I came home and I told my husband, I said, this old man actually said something about when people get to our age, meaning he and I are the same age. Like, what is this?
You're like, I'm sorry, we are not the same age, sir.
I was offended. I thought he thinks I'm old. He's looking at me. He thinks I'm old.
Excuse me, sir. You need to go back over there to your own. Go to your own people.
But I was so offended. Because I'm thinking, I tell people, you have to guess I'm at least 20 years younger than I actually am. So, but at any rate, but I actually thought it was great that he was out there walking.
Yeah.
Offend me. But what I've learned too, at one time, I say I'm competitive, but I applaud everybody I see out there who is walking or running, and is just doing whatever, just trying to stay fit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm probably not even answering the question, whatever it was.
It's okay. It happens a lot. It happens a lot on the show.
How I got into running and what the role it played in my life. It's transforming. And I also, I should say this too. I also, in the book, I decided that I wanted to mention some things that people don't talk about as runners. And my primary care physician said to me, I was having some issues because of pelvic floor issues. She says, "Oh, nobody talks about that." And so, and a man who read the book said he thought I couldn't TMI too much.
Well, sorry, sir.
But he's a former runner, but he's a track runner, and he's like, I think maybe 800s. So what does he know about any of this stuff?
That's right.
Some of the realities of being a distance runner.
That's right. And also being a female distance runner as well.
Female distance runner.
I'm sorry, pelvic floors are a real thing. So
but I included some of those. I had misgivings about including some of that sections in some of those sections in the book, but I said, I'm just going to do it because it's the truth. I mean, and truth be told, when I fell, the reason wasn't looking at the sidewalk, I'll admit it to your audience. I was thinking, I have to tinkle. And so I'm looking down the trail to see if anybody's around so I can find a bush to hop behind. And I wasn't looking at where I was walking, and that's why I tripped and then broke my foot. Okay, it's true. That's the truth. And I thought, oh my God, why didn't I just cheat on myself? When long runs, I wear black clothes because people can't see moisture.
Yes, you can go.
So this is it. You have a what do you call it?
The listeners are
You
getting
have the story, the truth.
yes, the listeners are getting the inside
That's
scoop.
why I fell. The inside, you have the scoop. That's why I fell.
Have you heard about Anchor? It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free, y'all. Free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you. So it can be heard on platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and so many more. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. It's how I've made this podcast. So, have you got something you'd like to say? Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today.
Thanks for listening. The Last 10th podcast is a production of The Mindful Run Coaching and Training, and me, your host, Coach Pilar, with the help of great tools here on Anchor. If you like the show, remember you can listen on your desktop at anchor.fm. You can also listen on platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Spotify, and so many more. Now you can also view episodes on my new YouTube channel. Please feel free to leave me a message. I'd really love to hear your thoughts and feedback on the show, or even ideas for future guests. Don't forget to leave your thoughtful and positive review on Apple Podcasts. Apple makes it possible for so many people to find and listen to the show. Your reviews will help. Finally, if you really appreciate and love the stories and interviews that I've been sharing, please consider supporting the show. Click support on anchor.fm or in the Anchor app. A portion of the proceeds will always benefit my charity of choice. It happens. I mean, it's one of those things that I feel like runners who are not comfortable talking freely about these bathroom issues and the issues that come up, because if you're running these long distances, things come up, things happen. It's just the way that it is. It's inevitable. If you are outside on a trail or on the road for 2 or 3 hours, something is going to come up.
Yeah.
That's just life.
So, but that's the truth of why I fell.
There you have it.
And I missed the October 2021 Boston Marathon because I wasn't watching. Too busy looking to see who's down the trail.
Is there a place that I might be able to take a little sidestep? I mean,
and that's exactly what I was thinking. And there was a man and there was a woman, and I'm thinking, why are they there? And, but it's been an interesting journey. It really has been. It's been a lot of fun. It really has been. I'm hoping that I will, and I'm probably digressing a little bit, as is my way, but I am.
That's okay.
I've actually signed up for a marathon, and I'm hoping I'll be able to run at some point this fall, a marathon. I'd like to do a half marathon, obviously, before then.
Absolutely.
My foot doctor tells me the old bones heal slowly, and they really do. But at least he's letting me run. right now. I've been running for a couple of weeks again.
Yeah. And right now there's no pain or anything like that when you're
No,
running.
there's no pain. There's a
That's
little bit
good.
of swelling, and it's not the bone isn't healed. I get x-rayed every 2 months. And he says, "Oh, the x-rays are always behind. It's how do you feel?" And
That's
I'm
right.
thinking, you're just trying to make me feel better because these x-rays don't look that great.
But still, I mean, as long as you're not in any pain, then and your doctor says that it's fine. Really, that's the issue. You just don't you want to be able to continue doing this for as long as you can. So the goal is continued longevity in the sport. So that's most important.
Brian, I wrote the book too for that, to encourage people of my age to run.
Absolutely.
To let them know that it is doable, even if you think you can't. And if you're not consumed by hardware, as some of us are, there is a lot to be. I know people who run just to be with the group. Because I was talking, they tell me sometimes they will run. They're not interested in running for to place or win place or show or anything.
Sure.
They're wanting to be part of that group experience.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why I haven't run a lot of marathons or a lot of half marathons, but people have those objectives of half marathon in every state, a marathon in every state, a marathon in every continent, and they have lots and lots and lots of races. I don't, because I could do that, and I know people who run sometimes like a marathon every weekend or 3 marathons a month, but they're running not for awards. And I'm trying to qualify for Boston in every marathon that I run. And I will probably at some point get around to running just to socialize. I think I'll get there. I probably need a personality transplant. But I think to me, when I get to that point, that will represent, I think, for me, real growth. Expect to see some stunning. But I would love to get to that point.
Sure.
I really would.
Sure. Of where you feel that
where I can just run in a race just to have fun and not just not feel so competitive.
I see.
Maybe I will do that in a race in which I'm the only person in my age group.
If you have any,
I can achieve 2 things.
That's exactly right. I mean, if you have any really local races, probably would be the thing, like local 5Ks, really small, 200, 300 people. Those are going to be the races where, it's just like, you don't have to go crazy.
Actually, I did Wine Blast. That was my last marathon. I think there were only 4 people in my age group.
Wow.
That's a big marathon.
Wow.
But as I said, when I'm 80,
yes,
there may be no one else. If I'm in a small race.
You'll be number 1. This past year, I happened to place in a local race in my marathon. There were only, I don't know, maybe like 6 people that were 50 and above or something like this. And I placed like 1 or 2 or 3. And
wow.
I know, crazy, but only because there were only 6 people.
Take advantage of every situation in which you find yourself. I read an article yesterday about this, what was it, Outdoors or something, about this man in his 80s who consciously, he says he's doing this on the track. He said he'll be lapped like 2 or 3 times, but he's the only person in the 80s. And so he gets records.
There you have it.
And he's very consciously doing this.
So it was like, that was like the first and likely for quite some time, the only time that I will ever place in a race, because I am not that fast. So, but I was just like, wow. And they had like, little awards or something. It was like, like a pair of gloves or something like this. But I was like, I emailed that I left because I had left the race and went home. I had no idea. I get home and I look and I'm like, oh my goodness, I placed in this race. So I emailed the race director. I left, I went home, but I had no idea I was going to place. I want my prize.
And I will say, for another thing, you asked about the book.
Yes.
I also wrote, so I wanted to provide information for women.
Absolutely.
I also wanted to encourage African American women and girls to run. We're still, African American women or females are still underrepresented in road racing, especially. And I want people to know that there are people out there, ordinary people,
yes,
who are running. And I know they have Black Girls Run. You have a lot of other groups that encourage African American women to run, or women of African descent to run, and girls. But a lot of those women are younger, who are involved in that those kinds of efforts. But older women can run as well, regardless of race, ethnicity. They can run. There is no reason that older women have to be unfit, and it's not a function of size or anything. I mean, they can be fit if they will do what they need to do, which is walk, whatever, lift weights. And I do a lot of weight work. Believe it, I know you find that difficult to believe.
You look
but
great.
I do a lot of weight work. I love weight work. But I want to encourage people to be healthy. And again, I want to be a role model of sorts for, and I thought the book was a good way to get that information out there. Also, to let people know about the joys of nature, whatever.
Well, I mean, how would you address, because I hear this often when I'm running, people will see you and they say, "Oh, I wish I could do what you do." And I say, "You can. You just one foot in front of the other, you can." Right. So how do you address folks who have that as their objection, even though you tell them that you can? I think that people's natural inclination is to think that what you're doing and where you are in that moment is where they need to start. They forget that there was a starting point.
Well, if people let me talk with them, I will tell them about my inability to get around the track. And somebody asked me too about if I had ever been fat. Huh? And I said, I know somebody else asked me about whether I had any children. Because I think that people were trying to come up with not excuses, but I said, well, no, I've never been fat. But I do have a child. And my also an issue that's raised a lot of times is that people want to run so they can lose weight. And there's no connection between your size and your ability to run.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, there is no thing as a typical runner.
That's right.
I mean, there's some people who can beat me.
That's right.
And okay, they're younger people, but but there are a lot of fast people. Runners don't. There's no size or shape for a runner.
That's
and
right.
a lot of runners, a lot of those skinny little people can't run. And a lot of people that most people would consider larger people can run. They can just trounce people. So I don't address this in a book, but I wish that people, I would hope that people would see possibility for themselves, or that they would, but I think it's a natural thing, because that way you sort of have an excuse for not doing something.
Yes.
I'm not thinking, you must not have any children.
As I think that you're absolutely right. I think it's just, yes, I think people's natural inclination is to just want, especially when it comes to running, is to just want to throw up a lot of barriers, because they just haven't seen themselves as doing that thing. And somehow it just seems like this difficult thing, but really at the end of the day, really all it really is just one foot in front of the other. You run, and when you first start, you run a little bit and you get tired, then walk.
Walk. And
No big deal.
No, there's nothing. Actually, when you start, that's what you're told. Walk, run, walk, run,
That's
walk,
right.
run. And if you don't feel like running, then walk.
Exactly. No,
You know,
there's
get
no.
out there. And I, by the way, don't think that everybody in the world needs to run.
That's right.
You know what I mean? I think
Sure.
that people just should be active.
Sure.
Do what they enjoy doing, what they feel capable of. And a lot of times people will participate in something if they're invited, or if you can get them to join you. I don't know what it means. When this one woman, when I used to go to a fitness center, she wanted me to run with her, and she never came back. So I thought, I don't know what the message is here. So I think
I'm not sure what happened.
we were doing walk, run, and I think she became tired. And I think too, if you're going to encourage somebody to run, I think you need to be conscious of the fact that that's what you're doing. You're not out there doing your thing. You want to try to get that person, and so you need to adjust what you're doing so that person will want to come back and be with you. And
absolutely.
And if the person doesn't, that's okay. My son doesn't run. He says, "Mom, I don't like running." He does. And he's a good runner.
Yeah.
But he said he doesn't like it. So he walks. He also does, weight training.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And he bikes. But he said he doesn't like running. Well, fine. It took me. You have no idea how many times I tried to get him to run. I just finally gave up when he stood me up one time. We were supposed to meet, and he didn't even. He goes, "Oh,
oh, geez, I'm sorry."
Sorry. But I mean, I don't. No, by no means do I think running is for everyone. I think everybody should give it a try. Walk, whatever you want to do. Swim. I can't swim. I wish I could. But I learned how to bike. I'm off the subject. I know. I learned how to bike when I was, I think, 66 years old.
Wow.
The biking instructor said, "You're the oldest person I've ever taught how to ride a bike." But it was something I wanted to do.
Absolutely.
And so, I did it. So, and I was afraid.
Of course. Well, it's a whole new thing. I mean, if you fall off a bike, you could break something.
Maybe that's why we were always practicing on the grass. No, that's what he said. He said, well, actually, when our first lesson, it was on the grass. He said, because if you fall, you won't hurt yourself.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
But those are, and back to the thing about why I wanted to tell my story because I thought, at least for me, I thought it was a story that would resonate with other people, who've had trying times and who've found ways to get over or try to at least live with those trying times. I mean, for me, running was a way to do that. And running also, as I indicated before, led to so many other things, my self-reflection, the mindfulness piece. And I've had some bad running experiences.
As have we
all.
When
I messed up in the Boston, 2016, when I had to get an IV.
Oh my goodness.
And then in the 2018 Boston, I actually tore my arch at around mile 15 of the marathon. And I was lucky though, because there was a physical therapist who was in one of the medical tents who actually taped my foot so that I could finish.
Wow.
I will say this, I have, knock on wood, I have never started a race I haven't finished.
Wow.
But I'm telling you, but I was lucky. I think I'm lucky because there's sometimes I realize that you might be out there and you having grit might not get you through.
Yes.
Because if I hadn't encountered that, if that physical therapist hadn't been there, there was no way I'd even be able to walk to the end of that race.
They were in the medical tent?
Medical tents.
Really? And they taped you up and sent you back on your way?
They didn't want me to go. But when I had the IV, the woman, the physician assistant, I told her that if I became, like too weak or something, that I would stop and have somebody get the thing to take, sort of the sag wagon to take you
Mm-hmm.
into the end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, and that woman believed me. I'm thinking, I have sold her a gold mine. There was no way I was going to not finish that race. I would have finished that race if I had to
Crawled.
get down on my hands and knees.
I understand. I understand.
No.
I've only had so far in my own race career, I've only had 2 races where, I mean, I always have a certain point during a race where I especially in a marathon, where I go, okay, why am I here? I should probably just stop. It's not a serious contemplative moment, but I've only had 2 races where I was like, you know what? You should really just stop. And that was last year's Chicago Marathon, because it was like 78 degrees. It was so hot.
Oh my
It
gosh.
was horrible.
I love to do Chicago.
It's a great race. But I saw my husband at like mile 18, and he's like, how's it going? And I just started crying and just, it's horrible. It's the worst time ever. I'm so hot. I can't do it. And I cried, and I felt better. And I was like, all right, good. We're good. We'll go back to it. And then another race, I have asthma and I forgot my inhaler. It was also very hot. And I asked the medical people if they had albuterol, and they said, we do have it, but if we give you the albuterol, you'll have to leave the race. And I was like, well, looks like I'm going to keep going. So.
Well, and I'm not suggesting that you would just continue on, that somebody would just continue on, because
of course.
Because when I told this runner that I met, she actually is she's somebody who'd run in the Olympic marathon, the trials.
Mm.
And I told her what I had done, and she said she would have stopped. And what she said to me was that elite athletes stop all the time.
Of course.
She said, because we don't want to risk injury, and DNFing did not finish is nothing to be concerned about, because being injured is worse than stopping a race. And she made a valid point.
Absolutely.
So,
they get paid to do what they do, though. We pay.
My husband tells me when I'm out there, I don't run as well as I wanted to, because there are a lot of times I run and I'm not happy with how well I did.
Yeah.
And he'll say, oh gosh, does this mean you're going to lose your shoe contract?
I always think about that in terms of like elite athletes, that they do stop all the time, and they will call it in a minute, because that's their career. And they have I don't want to say that that's a luxury, because it's not a luxury, but it's just a different mindset, really. For the amateur athlete, it's just kind of like,
And I guess maybe, and I'm thinking for me, I mean, I could just finish and my time would be bad. And then and in 2016, that was one of the times I did not qualify for Boston, because I lost so much time in the medical tent with the IV. And in 2018, I did not qualify in the Boston Marathon, for the 2019 Boston Marathon, because of losing time, having my foot taped. But I was proud of my effort in 2018, because I thought, that was tough. That was, with the wind and the cold. I love cold weather, so it didn't bother me. And I would have been fine if I hadn't lost time in the tent. But it's been a journey.
Indeed.
And I do present my journey, saving myself.
You got it.
One step at a time. And that is indeed what I have done through running.
Absolutely.
I have saved myself. I'm so silly.
I love that. I love that. You are ready for Oprah's book club, okay?
Do you know her? Maybe you can put in a word.
I don't. I wish I did, but I don't. I haven't gotten in with Oprah yet.
So you have an objective.
Yeah. TJ, before we finish up, what I would really love to hear from you, this is my golden ticket question of the day. If you had advice, so if there's advice that you've ever been given, or if there is advice that you would like to give, what would it be?
It would be to stay active.
Mm.
And maybe I'm saying this because I'm old. Oh,
Older.
according to the gentleman I saw yesterday. What does he know? But I would remain active, and I mean physically active,
Mm.
because and the form doesn't have to be um, running, walking, swimming, whatever, but remain active. The gentleman I saw yesterday indicated that he's 79. He said that his doctor told him that he needs to walk 8 miles per week. And per week. So that's nothing, but that's to me. But
Right.
he said to me, he said, my back hurts. He said, and he had another issue. He said, I bike a lot, but he said, I can't do 8 miles a week, but he can do something, I guess, that would translate to something similar. And he was
Mm-hmm.
out there, and it was really cold here yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's out there walking, trying to get in his time, because he knows that being active just makes a big difference. I mean, you it reduces the likelihood of dementia,
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
uh, has an impact on um, your heart,
Mm-hmm.
um, and blood pressure,
Mm-hmm.
and you can forestall, and it has an impact on your weight,
Absolutely.
uh, and you can forestall a lot of maladies or conditions by remaining active in some form. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I would encourage people, not just older people like moi, but but regardless of your age, you should. I would encourage people to remain physically active, also to remain intellectually active.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, I think I read all the time. And even today, I may reread this wonderful book. But who's promoting
Yeah.
this book
Yeah.
that has so many truths about running and
Yes.
so many truths about life?
Yes.
And if I may quote someone in the over 70 running, it's a Facebook group,
Yeah.
there's so much wisdom here.
Yes. I love that. I love it. TJ, thank you so, so very much for joining me today. It has been just a really great conversation with you. I really appreciate you joining me.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm just so happy to have had the opportunity to talk with you.
Absolutely.
Happy
Absolutely.
running. Oh, I'm stealing that line from Brooks, right? Oh, run happy.
I'd like to take a moment to thank TJ for joining me on the show today. TJ, it was a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and also a couple of really great laughs throughout the show. I really appreciate the conversation we had today. For you, my dear listeners, if you would like to purchase TJ's book, you can find it on Amazon. The title of the book is Saving Myself One Step at a Time, a running memoir. I will put information about that in the show notes. And remember that TJ has a new book that'll be coming out within the next few months or so. And that book will be called Black Girl in Red, White, and Blue America. Of course, join me here again next week for another episode of the Last 10th podcast.